My husband cheated, told me I let myself go. I divorced him and got my life back. Now he wants to reconcile, but I gave him the shock of his life. I, 34F, had not imagined reaching this point in life, but here I am. I am married to my husband John, 36M, and we have been together for the last 8 years. We have a 6-year-old son named Daniel. It all started back in college, when through mutual friends, we met at a campus fundraiser. I was a junior studying education, and John was a senior majoring in finance. He organized the event, I volunteered for it. We got along so well because we shared the love for 90s sitcoms and spicy food. John did, raised in an affluent suburb, an only child to successful parents, where his father was a surgeon and his mother, Barbara, was a corporate attorney who retired to devote her energies to charity work. John always had the best of everything, and he knew how to get his way. By contrast, I was from a middle-class family living in a small town. My parents were both teachers who taught me the value of hard work and compassion. Our relationship moved at such a fast clip. John was charming, funny, and had ambition, those qualities that I thought were so important in a partner. He would surprise me with weekend getaways out of town or with other things like lavish presents, all very exciting to me back then. But now, in hindsight, this was the way he impressed me, and perhaps it was the manner of trying to compensate for what wasn't going to be there, an emotional connection. We moved in together a year after we started dating, and, 6 months later, he proposed. It was very grand. He rented out the whole restaurant and hired a string quartet to play our favorite song. It was so movie-like that I was literally swept off my feet. However, planning the wedding really started to show some of the cracks in our relationship. I had wanted an intimate ceremony with just close friends and family present. John had insisted on a large, overly ostentatious affair of over 300, most of whom I had never known. He had tried to convince me that he had to make it in his career and that a big wedding with all his business connections would make a difference. I threw in the towel, not wanting to disappoint him or his family. This pattern of wanting and agreeing would continue well into our marriage. The first couple of years seemed all right, at least cosmetically. We both worked at our careers. I finally landed a beginning-level teaching position in a local elementary school while John kept climbing the corporate ladder, landing executive positions at respected financial institutions. He was quite the traveler, always pushing for luxury resorts with expensive activities to boot. While I did appreciate the experience, often I felt extremely uncomfortable with the extravagance. Everything had changed radically when I got pregnant with Daniel. This was everything but planned. John himself wasn't that thrilled at first. At first, he felt the weight of added responsibility and the potential impacts on his carefree life and future career path. I was very hopeful that he would get attached when the baby finally arrived, that is, until his reaction really hurt me. John was hardly involved at all throughout the whole of my pregnancy. He wouldn't come to most of the doctor's appointments with me and said he had a lot to do at work. Then, when I asked him to come set up the nursery with me, he hired a professional decorator for it when that was one of the things we should have bonded on while preparing for the baby together. The entire time I was pregnant, I felt all alone and like I wasn't supported by anyone. When Daniel was born, I thought that maybe things would change. Instead, he appeared more aloof. He also began working past midnight, stating the infant's crying was hurting his head. I was exhausted from caring for an infant son and working full-time as a teacher. John's mother, Barbara, was my best friend then. She would babysit Daniel so that I could take a rest or run other errands, and she was always there with a kind word or some home-baked meal. As the years passed by, John's unpreparedness to be a father turned into something even worse. He would get annoyed by the noise Daniel made when he was watching television or working from home. Once, when Daniel was 3, he had even managed to spill juice over John's laptop. His reaction was dreadful, leaving little Daniel crying for several hours. I approached him about that incident, but he waved me off saying I was only babying my child. John wouldn't attend any of the activities they had going at the preschool. He refused. He told me that all of those things were a waste of time. He didn't attend Daniel's first Christmas play, and our poor son was crushed. I had to tell Daniel that Daddy had an important meeting he just couldn't get out of to calm his tears. The real story was that he had chosen to attend a business dinner instead. At home, it was as if I were walking on eggshells. John criticized nearly everything, from my cooking to how I dressed. He would make snide comments in reference to my mom clothes and tell me to really try harder to look good for him. Whenever I tried to talk to him about his words hurting me, he said that I was overly sensitive. John also controlled the money aspect, which put me on a small allowance for the money I was making that was supposed to support the household anyway. He would say I didn't need to know more than that and tell me not to worry my pretty little head about it. That financial control meant I felt trapped, unable to make even small decisions without John's approval. The emotional gap between us seemed to widen year after year. More and more, John preferred to stay at work or be out with colleagues, while I buried myself in taking care of Daniel and my job. We didn't talk to each other much anymore, and our intimate life had become rather poor. Things came to a head last month. I came home a day early from work to surprise John with lunch, that being our anniversary. I walked in to find him in bed with his co-worker Amanda, 29F. I stood there in shock, the lunch bag slipping from my fingers and hitting the floor. The noise alerted them to my presence, and the look on John's face was not one of guilt but one of annoyance at being caught. Devastated, but not entirely surprised. There had been signs, late nights at the office, mysterious texts, a new cologne. I ignored them, the very fact of trying to disturb Daniel's life or face the reality of my failing marriage. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. I let myself go after having Daniel, he coldly told me, and he just wasn't attracted to me. He said Amanda understands him in ways I never could and that she is ambitious and exciting. I was flabbergasted with the cruelty he was capable of, words cutting deep into a heart already in bits. I asked John to leave that night. He packed a bag without argument and has been staying with Amanda since. I don't know, it feels like it's been weeks of lawyers and uncomfortable conversations with Daniel after that. Trying to explain to a 6-year-old why daddy doesn't live at home anymore, well, that's been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I think some people are just trying to keep up appearances. John has seen Daniel only once since he moved out, and that was to take him to a movie so he could claim he was still involved. He brought Daniel home an hour early, saying that he had some important work call. I found from Barbara that he had actually gone to a baseball game with Amanda. My mother-in-law, Barbara, has been very understanding and supportive. She was furious when she learned about John's affair and told me that she always felt he was too selfish to be a good husband and father. That she is on my side makes all the difference, as I haven't talked to my parents yet, and I'm really putting off that conversation because I just know how much they are going to be disappointed by this news. I'm really having a hard time figuring out what to do next. Part of me thinks I should try to work things out for Daniel's sake, but deep inside, I know that I deserve a lot better than how John has treated me all these years. If we divorce, I have fears about finance since John has always been in control of the money. What our real situation is, I have no idea, and that's what terrifies me. I also don't like the idea of sharing child custody with someone who takes so little interest in his child. Even though John pays him hardly any attention, Daniel loves him, and I am very concerned about the psychological repercussions this will be for my son. Please give me your advice on how to deal with this situation. I am totally at sea and so apprehensive for the future, but I need to stay strong for the sake of Daniel. How do I protect our son and stand up for myself at the same time? And now how do I rebuild my life when everything I thought was solid has crashed around me? Update 1, it's been about 2 months since my last post, and a lot of things happened. Thanks to everyone who gave advice and offered support. I really appreciate it, for this has really been a very intense and hard time. After mulling everything over and after several painful conversations with John, I decided to just go through with filing for divorce. It wasn't an easy choice, but I realized I couldn't stay in a marriage with someone who had so little respect for myself and our son. That happened during a meeting with John himself. The way he saw solving the problem was my leaving my job, in order to become a good wife and mom, and he would try to be around the house more. The idea of giving up my career and independence for someone who betrayed me so deeply was finally enough to push me out of the door. But John's reaction to the divorce papers was so incredibly predictable, in fact, one might say selfish. He expressed more concern for how he would be seen at work than for how Daniel would fare. He even suggested that we tell others it was a mutual decision to part, and not because of his infidelity. I told him I wouldn't lie to protect his reputation. While the divorce process has been messy, John is attempting to underestimate me on the settlement by bringing all these emotional arguments, citing how he was the primary breadwinner and, therefore, most of the assets should be his. He even argues about my salary as a teacher, which he deems good enough for me to go on with life, hence totally disregards my life sacrifices in holding up his career and taking care of our child. My lawyer assures me this won't fly in court, particularly in light of his affair and my staying home to care for our child. One specifically got quite animated while debating over the house. I want to keep it for Daniel's sake, to have something concrete for him. John said we should sell it and liquidate while the going was good. He said he needed his half to buy another place big enough for him and such. That he's prioritizing his new living situation with his affair partner over Daniel's stability speaks volumes about his character. But one good thing happened through all this. I found a support network I didn't know I had. My co-workers at the school knew about my situation with my husband and have been so incredibly understanding, offering to be able to take on the classes if I need to miss some. At the same time, my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, has been taking Daniel after school so I can work later to make up for the time missed. She's even been teaching him Spanish, which he loves. I finally broke down and told my parents. It was a hard conversation to start, but they turned out to be more supportive than I thought they would be. My mom even flew out to spend the week with us and helped with Daniel. She was giving me emotional support, and my dad, being the usual hardened one in our family, said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Barbara, my mother-in-law, has been my constant rock. And she's even testified on my behalf as John neglecting Daniel with his controlling behavior toward me in our marriage. She attested to incidents of him missing important events in Daniel's life, and when he belittled me before others. When John caught wind of Barbara's interactions with my attorney, he was incensed, accusing her of betraying the family. He went ballistic and showed up at her house, yelling, demanding that she retract her statement. Barbara said he was more important to her than some blind loyalty to him. She even dropped the hint that he'd be out of her will if he kept up being an ass. To say the least, I had never seen that side of Barbara, and it did make me look at her with much more esteem than I had before. What breaks my heart now is that Daniel is having a rough time with the changes. This rough time was expressed in out-of-order behavior in school, where he got into fights with other kids. Apparently, his teacher mentioned that he drew a picture of our family in art class but scribbled John out in black crayons. He's also been having nightmares and often crawls into my bed in the middle of the night. But I cannot blame John with his erratic visits and broken promises for that. Last Tuesday, John forgot to pick up Daniel for a planned dinner. I came home to find Daniel on the front porch 1 hour after the pickup time, fighting back tears. I had to bite my lip not to get on the phone with John and start yelling at him. Instead, I took Daniel out for ice cream, and we had a long talk about feelings and disappointment. It wasn't easy, but I think it helped him understand that John's behavior isn't his fault. On a personal note, I've started to rediscover myself. For so long, my identity was wrapped up in being John's wife and Daniel's mom. Now, I'm learning who I am as just me. I've also joined a local book club, where I've met some hotties of the finest quality. It's kind of nice to have adult conversations not centered around divorce or motherhood. I do yoga classes in the evenings a couple of times a week now. The physical activity and mindfulness practices have been crucial in managing my stress and emotions during this time. Financially, I won't lie to you, things are tight. I tutored on the side to help pay the bills. I do my own budgets too now for the first time. I never actually got into it with John because he did it all. In fact, what I've learned is exactly where and how our money was going to be filling in all those years. This has meant making some pretty tough decisions, like canceling our premium cable package and cutting back on our takeout meals, but it's empowering to have control over my own money for the first time in years. Going forth is still a long and uncertain road, but I feel more convinced by the day that I've made the right decision when it comes to John. Daniel deserves to see his mother happy and respected, and I deserve a person who cares for me. Although I am not ready for dating at the moment, I hope that one day I will find a real partner and a good role model for Daniel. At the moment, I am rebuilding, getting through each day by building a safe, loving environment for my son with lots of positive energy good for healing. It's really hard on some days, but I take one day at a time. I'm realizing that it's perfectly okay not to have all the answers and that seeking help in this phase does not make me weak. If anything, this experience has shown me just how strong I can be when I need to be. Update 2, another 3 months into the winding road of life. The divorce finally went through last week, and I have to be honest, I felt like a burden was lifted off my shoulders as I was signing those final papers. The journey to this point wasn't easy. Nevertheless, I am proud of what and how I went through. The settlement was more than what I expected, for I'm happy my attorney was able to prove financial misconduct by John, such as accounts that he was maintaining which he has not disclosed for about a year, which is grounds for him to fund this relationship with Amanda. I'm glad I was awarded more shares in distribution and higher child support payment. And I get to keep the house, so this way Daniel does not have to switch schools or lose his friends. One of the most satisfying moments though has to be when it was revealed that John had been stealing company funds to fund his lifestyle. My lawyer advised me to oblige his employers to this fact. I was initially reluctant, thinking that it might just be construed as vindictiveness on my part, but I went ahead, felt that it had to be done. And this cost John his high-flying job. Part of me feels guilty about this, but I can't deny that he asked for it. John's relationship with Amanda ended spectacularly about a month ago. It is found out that she was two-timing, and with whom, their boss. And John finds out about it very publicly too, at a work-related event. As Barbara reported, John really raised his voice, shouting at Amanda and his boss, in front of everyone. Raging security escorted him outside, additionally ruining his professional image. In the aftermath of this, John tried to throw himself at my feet. He showed up at the house, clearly drunk, late one night, claiming that he had made a big mistake and wanted to make things work. He said he realized what he had lost and begged me to let him be a better husband and father if I took him back. For just a moment, I felt the flicker of those old feelings, but then I remembered all the hurt he had caused, all those times he had chosen himself over his family. I shot that right down, though, telling him trust was irreparably broken, and I would not be anybody's second choice. It had been so hard to close the door in his face, although at the same time, it was a feeling of utmost empowerment. Daniel is slowly coming to terms with our new lifestyle. He still has bad days, especially when John reneges on his offer to see him, which he really does too frequently. But regular visits to a psychologist working with children have become very effective in the expression of his emotions and feelings. He started a feeling journal, in which he can draw, or write about, the way he feels during the day. It really has been a super way for us to get to talk about his emotions. John still visits occasionally, a fact that really angers Daniel. However, I do my best to stabilize things for the big events at home. We have started some new projects, like on Sunday morning, I may cook pancakes, and on Friday evening, we may have a movie night. Somehow, all those small rituals seem to make a difference for Daniel, which helps him feel more secure. A few other good things came my way, too. Finally, I got the promotion I was looking for in school, to be the head of the department in charge of English. That throws more responsibility at me, with a nice boost to the salary. It certainly felt good to be recognized and all. The principal actually came to me about it, saying that she noticed how much I stuck it out through my personal difficulties. I've also started volunteering at a local women's shelter on Saturday mornings while Daniel does his soccer practice. It is really rewarding, and I get my mind off my own struggles. They share their stories with me, and I realize how very lucky I am to have the support system I do. I've even been encouraged by the center to do a book club, and reading love has been shared with the women who are there rebuilding lives. Barbara remains a beautiful grandmother to Daniel and a great friend to me. She has actually begun dating again herself, having met a nice widower named Tom at her church. Just watching her begin to find a modicum of happiness has been something. She and Tom often take Daniel for weekend sleepovers, which lets me get some personal time that has been sorely missing in my life. As for me, I am not ready for dating just now, but I tend to find self-esteem somehow. I discover how much of me I lost, making an effort just to please John and fit his idea of an ideal wife. I now embrace my interests and dreams without worrying about anybody's approval. I have started taking a creative writing class at the local community college. It's something I have always wanted to do, but he has always discouraged me, saying it was a waste of time. There are still challenges ahead, particularly those of co-parenting with John. He remains inconsistent, and I am gradually learning how to set some firm boundaries. I have even started to take my lawyer's advice by documenting all of our interactions and his missed visits. It is difficult, but I promised myself that I would do what is right for Daniel, even if sometimes that means placing myself in the position of being the bad guy in John's eyes. Despite being hard, I feel stronger and able to fight back with whatever comes my way. I have learned out of this experience that I am much stronger than what I thought before. I view the future cautiously optimistically, working toward a happy, stable life for both me and Daniel. Update 3. It has been 6 months since the last update, and life has fallen into a new rhythm. It must just be as Daniel has started his 2nd grade. He really enjoys being there. He has already made some new friends, and his teacher says that he is one of those kids very willing to learn. The other day when he came back home, he was so excited about the science project he was given regarding the solar system. So we spent the weekend doing a model of all the planets, and it was really nice to see how vividly interested and involved he gets. Co-parenting with John has been difficult. His visits come infrequently, and most times, he uses the last minute to cancel his visits. Last month, Daniel had a soccer game in which he scored his first goal. I could see the disappointment in Daniel's eyes as he scanned the sides looking for his dad. It takes a toll on Daniel, but I'm proud at how resilient my son has turned out to be. We have a pattern established. Every time John cancels, we have a special movie night, which helps to soften the disappointment. My financial situation is also in dire straits since I lost my job. I fell behind in my child support, and that has been weighing on me. My attorney is working on getting that settled, but it is just another issue I am trying not to deal with. On a good note, his not being around has given Daniel and me the chance to bond even more. I have made continued efforts to grow myself. I completed a small creative writing course at a local community college and have recently started working on a series of children's stories. It has been really something to put my experiences into these stories that may help other kids out there going through a divorce. My instructor encouraged me to send in one to a publishing house, and honestly, the prospect leaves me nervous, but very excited at the same time. Financially, things are so much better. I got that promotion at work and have been able to start saving for Daniel's college fund, something John always said was a waste of time. I've also been able to take Daniel on a few weekend trips, creating new, happy memories for just the two of us. Last month, we went hiking at a nearby state park. We discovered a hidden waterfall, and the look on Daniel's face was priceless. Barbara could always be counted on when help was needed. They have taken on the role of being grandparents to Danny, and he truly adores them. They would often take him for weekend sleepovers, thus affording me some personal free space and time. Barbara had been the one to help me find that equilibrium on the single-parenthood roller coaster, give advice, and let me cry on her shoulder when I needed it. In my own life, I have tentatively started to get out there into the dating world again. Nothing serious so far, but it really is nice to know there are gentle, respectful men out there. His name is Mark, 38M, and I met him at a school fundraiser. He is a single father with a little girl also in Daniel's class. We've been out for coffee a few times, and boy, has it been nice to meet someone who can commiserate on the pitfalls of single parenting. Not that I'm looking to start anything new right now, though. I am working on Daniel and the ideas of a future with him that is as stable and happy as possible. Daniel loves playing the guitar. I was able to sign him up for classes, and the application part has been great to view. The instructor said he was a natural the first time he played, and the pride in Daniel's eyes every time he learns a new chord is precious. Work is still fulfilling. I've started a new reading program in my department, through which I already see good cohesion between it and students' and guardians' needs. It's satisfying to see the difference one can make in young minds, particularly now that I am so much more confident in my capacities. A year and a half later, I look back in awe of my journey. Many were the days when I felt that I would never smile again, and here I am, probably happier and more fulfilled than in all those years. Myself and Daniel have our routines, inside jokes, and favorite meals to cook together. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. There will, of course, always be tough days, days when the weight of single parenthood seems overwhelming or some memory of my life with John catches me off guard for a moment. But I'm better equipped to handle these moments now. I've learned that it's okay not to be okay sometimes, and to ask for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. I'm writing this, in the next room near, where Daniel is practicing guitar. The off-key notes he sends wafting through the house are a bit of a reminder of how life can be so beautiful in its imperfection. We are writing our story now, Daniel and I, and although it may not be the way I ever envisioned, it is coming along quite marvelously.